I found my husband's business trip receipts in his jacket, along with 2 plane tickets and a name I vaguely remembered, Meredith. I stood in our laundry room, holding the crumpled Delta boarding passes, Phoenix to Portland. 2 seats, departure last Thursday. The same Thursday, Garrett told me he was flying to Denver for a client meeting. The name rattled around in my head. Meredith. Then it clicked. His college girlfriend, the one he'd shown me photos of years ago when we were still dating, laughing about how young and stupid they'd been. She'd moved to Portland after graduation. He'd mentioned it once, casually, like it meant nothing. I checked the dates on the hotel receipt. 3 nights at the Sentinel, a boutique hotel downtown. Room service charges for 2. A bottle of champagne on the first night. Breakfast for 2 every morning. A couple's massage on Saturday. My hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me most. I felt oddly calm, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. I took photos of everything with my phone. Then I put it all back exactly where I'd found it, folded the jacket perfectly, and walked upstairs to start dinner. That night, Garrett came home with takeout and kissed my forehead. "How was Denver?" I asked, unpacking the Thai food. "Exhausting," he said, loosening his tie. "Back-to-back meetings, barely left the hotel." I nodded, taking a bite of pad thai. I watched him scroll through his phone while eating, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. For 2 weeks, I acted completely normal. I made dinners. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. The whole time, I was opening new bank accounts, scanning documents, photographing every asset we owned, and contacting the lawyer my friend had recommended after her divorce. I found their text thread by checking the phone bill online. Hundreds of messages. I couldn't read them without his password, but the timestamps told me enough. Messages at 2 a.m. Messages during our anniversary dinner last month. Messages the morning after we'd tried for a baby. I started noticing everything. How he'd bought new underwear. How he'd suddenly started caring about his haircut. The way he'd hum in the shower. Something he only did when he was genuinely happy. The breaking point came when I checked his calendar. Another Denver trip scheduled for next month. I cross-referenced it with Meredith's Instagram. She'd posted about taking time off work those exact dates. I made an appointment with the lawyer for that Friday. Garrett was supposed to be at the office. Thursday night, his phone buzzed during dinner. He glanced at it and smiled, the same smile he used to give me. "Work emergency," he said, standing. "I need to take this." He walked into his office and closed the door. I pressed my ear against it and heard him laughing. "I can't wait either," he said softly. 2 more weeks. When he came back, I was clearing the dishes. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just a difficult client," he said. "Nothing I can't handle." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the small moments I'd ignored. The way he'd started showering the moment he got home from trips. How his phone was suddenly always face down. The new cologne. How he'd stopped reaching for me in bed. At 3 a.m., I got up and opened his laptop while he slept. His email was still logged in. I started with the sent folder, scrolling back months. Flight confirmations, hotel reservations, restaurant bookings in cities he'd supposedly never visited. Then I found the folder labeled Personal. Inside were dozens of emails. Not just to Meredith, 3 other names, 3 other women, different cities, different months. A pattern stretching back 2 years. But that wasn't the worst part. There were emails to his brother discussing how to hide money. Transfers to offshore accounts I'd never heard of. Discussions about selling our house without my knowledge. One email made my blood run cold. It was to his lawyer, dated 3 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Divorce strategy, minimizing her share." I sat there in the dark, realizing my husband hadn't just been cheating. He'd been systematically dismantling our life while I smiled and made him dinner. I screenshot everything, every email, every bank statement, every receipt, every text timestamp, every calendar entry that didn't match his stories. My laptop's hard drive filled up, so I bought an external drive and kept going. 2 years of deception, organized into folders by woman, by lie, by stolen dollar. The offshore accounts were in the Cayman Islands. He'd been funneling money there for 18 months. Our joint savings had mysteriously shrunk from $127,000 to $43,000. He'd explained it away as market fluctuations and home repairs that never happened. I found the deed to a condo in Austin, purchased 8 months ago under an LLC I'd never heard of. The address matched one from Meredith's old Facebook posts. At 4:30 a.m., Garrett rolled over and mumbled something in his sleep. I closed the laptop and slipped back into bed, my heart hammering so hard I was certain he could hear it. He couldn't. He just threw his arm across my waist like he'd done 1,000 times before, like he was a good husband, like he loved me. I lay there until sunrise, calculating, planning. My grandmother used to say the best revenge is living well, but she'd never been systematically robbed by someone who promised to love her forever. The lawyer's name was Patricia Chen. She came recommended by 3 different women in my yoga class, all divorced, all now thriving. Her office was downtown, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Professional but not intimidating. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and a handshake that meant business. "Walk me through everything," she said, pulling out a legal pad. I spent 2 hours showing her the evidence. She didn't interrupt, didn't gasp, didn't offer sympathy. She just took notes, occasionally asking for clarification on dates or amounts. When I finished, she sat back. "This is extensive," she said, "and very, very useful. Your husband made a critical mistake." "Only one?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "He underestimated you. They always do. In his emails to his lawyer, did he mention your employment status? He said I was a part-time bookkeeper. I'm actually the operations manager at a medical supply company. I make $89,000 a year." Patricia's smile widened. "He's been lying to his own lawyer about your income to minimize alimony calculations. That's fraud. And the offshore accounts? If we can prove he moved marital assets without your knowledge or consent, a judge will crucify him. What about the condo? The LLC is in his name only? Yes. Purchased during your marriage with what I'm assuming is marital money? I nodded. That's a marital asset. You're entitled to half its value, possibly more given the deception involved. She leaned forward. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to let him think he's in control. Let him take that next trip. Let him feel safe. Meanwhile, we'll be filing paperwork, freezing accounts, and building a case that will cost him everything he tried to hide. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Can you hold out that long? I thought about the last 2 years. The lies, the manipulation, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep thinking I wasn't enough. I can hold out as long as it takes. The next 13 days were the hardest of my life. I had to smile, had to pretend, had to play the oblivious wife while my husband packed for Portland and kissed me goodbye like I was an afterthought. I'll miss you, he said at the door, his overnight bag slung over his shoulder. Miss you too, I replied, and the words tasted like poison. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Patricia. He's gone. Perfect, I'm filing today. He'll be served with papers Monday morning at his office. By the time he lands in Portland, his accounts will be frozen and there'll be a lien on the house. What if he runs? He won't. Men like him think they're untouchable. He'll come home angry and confused, and that's when you'll be at your sister's house with all your important documents and half the furniture. My sister lived 20 minutes away in a neighborhood with a gate code and security cameras. When I called and told her everything, she said 3 words, "Get over here." I spent Friday afternoon methodically packing, not just clothes and toiletries. I took photos off the walls, the good cookware, my grandmother's china, the first edition books we'd collected, half the towels and sheets. Every item I removed, I documented with time-stamped photos showing it was still there, then gone. Patricia said judges hated when spouses accused each other of theft. Documentation was protection. By Friday night, the house looked noticeably emptier. I didn't care. I loaded everything into a U-Haul I'd rented under my maiden name, drove to my sister's house, and collapsed on her couch. "You're safe now," she said, handing me a glass of wine. I wasn't sure I believed her. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. Sat on my sister's couch with my phone in my hand, waiting. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Garrett's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "What the hell is this?" he screamed. "What the hell did you do?" "I filed for divorce," I said calmly, "and froze the accounts. All of them. You can't do that. That's my money. Our money. Marital assets. And according to my lawyer, you've been hiding quite a bit of it." Silence. Then, "You went through my emails." I did. Found some interesting reading material. Multiple affairs, offshore accounts, a condo in Austin. Should I keep going? "You're insane," he hissed. "I'll fight this. I'll make sure you get nothing." Actually, Garrett, I think you'll find it's the opposite. See, you made a mistake when you emailed your lawyer and lied about my income. That's fraud. And when you moved $84,000 to the Caymans without my signature, also fraud. My lawyer is very excited about that part. I could hear him breathing heavily. "I loved you," he said finally. "No," I replied. "You loved controlling me. There's a difference." I hung up. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from rage, from the satisfaction of finally having the upper hand. My sister hugged me from behind. "Proud of you," she whispered. The divorce took 9 months. 9 months of depositions and court appearances and lawyers arguing over every lamp and end tape. Garrett fought dirty. He claimed I was mentally unstable, that I'd fabricated evidence, that I'd been the one having affairs. His lawyer tried to paint me as a gold digger, conveniently forgetting that I'd been working full-time since before we got married. But Patricia was better. She brought in the emails showing him coaching his brother on how to lie in deposition, the bank statements proving he'd been systematically draining our accounts, testimony from his own lawyer's paralegal about how Garrett had instructed them to hide assets. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every divorce trick in the book. She was not impressed. The final hearing lasted 3 hours. Garrett sat across the courtroom in his expensive suit, trying to look like the victim. His lawyer kept objecting to everything, which only seemed to annoy the judge more. When Patricia showed the emails between Garrett and his divorce lawyer, the ones where they strategized about hiding money, the judge's expression shifted from neutral to openly hostile. "Mr. Harrison," she said, removing her glasses, "did you or did you not move $84,000 in marital funds to an offshore account without your wife's knowledge?" Garrett's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I asked your client, counsel." Garrett shifted in his seat. "I was protecting our assets." "From whom?" "From potential creditors." "You don't have any creditors, Mr. Harrison. What you have is a wife you were trying to rob." She put her glasses back on. "Here's my ruling. The house will be sold and proceeds split 60-40 in Mrs. Harrison's favor due to the attempted asset dissipation. The offshore account will be returned in full to Mrs. Harrison as compensation for deception. The Austin condo will be sold, with Mrs. Harrison receiving 75% of the proceeds. Mr. Harrison will pay spousal support of $3,200 per month for 4 years. He will also pay Mrs. Harrison's legal fees in full, which I see have reached $47,000. Garrett's face went white. "But Your Honor," his lawyer started. "I'm not finished. Mr. Harrison will also be reported to the state bar for his coordination with counsel to hide assets and commit fraud. Whether they choose to pursue charges is their decision, but this behavior is unacceptable and will not be rewarded in my courtroom." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." I sat there, stunned. Patricia squeezed my shoulder. "Congratulations," she said. "You just won your life back." Across the room, Garrett was arguing with his lawyer in harsh whispers. He looked up, caught my eye, and the hatred there was palpable. I smiled at him. Not a kind smile, not a forgiving smile. the smile of someone who'd beaten him at his own game. He looked away first. The house sold in 3 weeks. It was a seller's market, and we got $40,000 over asking. My share was $168,000 after closing costs. The offshore account had grown to $91,000 with interest. The Austin condo sold for $285,000. My 75% came to $213,750. I walked away from my marriage with nearly $500,000. Garrett walked away with his car, whatever furniture I'd left him, and a reputation as the guy who got destroyed in divorce court. The state bar did pursue charges. He wasn't disbarred. He wasn't a lawyer after all. But his own lawyer was suspended for 6 months, and several of Garrett's business contacts heard about what happened. People talk in professional circles. His consulting contracts started drying up. I heard through mutual friends that Meredith dumped him 2 months after the divorce finalized. Apparently, she'd thought he was wealthy. When she found out he was paying me $30,200 a month in spousal support and had lost most of his assets, she suddenly wasn't interested anymore. The other women disappeared too. Turns out, being a successful cheater requires money and status. Garrett had neither now. I bought a small townhouse in a neighborhood I loved. 2 bedrooms, a balcony with a view of the park, hardwood floors that caught the morning light perfectly. I furnished it slowly, deliberately, each piece chosen because I loved it, not because it matched some design scheme Garrett had approved. I hung my artwork wherever I wanted, painted the bathroom bright yellow because it made me smile, adopted a cat from the shelter, a cranky orange tabby who hated everyone except me. I named him Justice. Seemed appropriate. My sister threw me a divorce party 6 months after everything finalized. She invited 20 women, all divorced or never married, all thriving. We drank champagne and ate cake that said, "Best decision ever" in purple frosting. One woman, someone I barely knew, pulled me aside around midnight. "How did you do it?" she asked. "How did you keep it together while gathering evidence?" I found out my husband was cheating, and I confronted him immediately, gave him time to hide everything. I thought about those 2 weeks between finding the receipts and filing for divorce. The nights I'd lain awake next to Garrett, pretending everything was fine while screaming inside. "You pretend you're already dead," I said. "You pretend the version of you who loved him died the moment you found out? What's left is just a ghost gathering evidence. Ghosts don't feel pain, they just observe." She nodded slowly. "I wish I'd done that. You'll know for next time." We both laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was survival humor, the kind you develop when you've been betrayed by someone you trusted completely. A year after the divorce, I was promoted to senior operations manager. My boss called me into her office and said, "You've been different lately, sharper, more confident. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I didn't tell her that losing everything I thought mattered had actually freed me, that when you survive your worst fear, the complete dissolution of your life, you stop being afraid of smaller things, like asking for raises, or speaking up in meetings, or telling people no. My salary jumped to $112,000. I started traveling, small trips at first, weekend getaways to cities I'd always wanted to visit, then longer trips, 2 weeks in Italy, 10 days in Japan, a month backpacking through Southeast Asia. Garrett had hated traveling, said it was a waste of money, that we should save for retirement instead. I realized he'd been saving to leave me, building his escape fund while I'd been building our life. The irony was almost funny. I ran into Garrett 18 months after the divorce. It was at a coffee shop downtown. I was meeting my sister for brunch. He was in line ahead of me, looking tired and significantly older than I remembered. He turned and saw me. His face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, something that might have been regret. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Awkward silence. "You look good," he said finally. "Happy." "I am." More silence. "Look, about everything that happened, don't," I interrupted. "We're not doing this. We're not having some reconciliation moment where you apologize and I forgive you. You made your choices. I made mine. We both have to live with them. I just wanted you to know. I don't care, Garrett. I genuinely, honestly do not care what you wanted me to know. You're a stranger to me now. Less than a stranger. You're just someone I used to know who treated me badly." His jaw tightened. "I loved you. You loved what I did for you. You loved having someone to lie to, someone who trusted you completely, someone you could manipulate while you played house with other women. That's not love. That's ownership." The barista called my name. My coffee was ready. I grabbed it and turned back to Garrett one last time. "I hope you figure out whatever's broken inside you," I said. "Not for me. I'm past caring about your healing journey, but for whoever comes next. Because this pattern you have, it'll destroy you eventually." I walked away. Didn't look back. My sister was already at our usual table, and when she saw my face, she stood up. "What happened?" "Ran into him," I said, sitting down. "It's fine." "You sure?" "Yeah. Weirdly, I am. I thought seeing him would make me angry or sad or something, but mostly I just felt nothing. He's just some guy who made bad choices and has to live with them. That's not my problem anymore." She hugged me across the table. "I'm so proud of you." "Me too." 2 years after the divorce, I met someone new. His name was Thomas. He was a graphic designer with kind eyes and a laugh that made my chest feel warm. He was terrible at cooking but loved washing dishes. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answers. He never checked his phone during dinner. On our 3rd date, I told him I was divorced. "Messy divorce or clean divorce?" he asked. "Nuclear divorce. Scorched earth. Very messy. Want to talk about it?" "Not really. But you should know he cheated. Multiple times. With multiple women. And he tried to hide money from me." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "How'd you find out?" "Found receipts in his jacket pocket. Boarding passes to Portland with another woman's name. That started the unraveling." "What did you do?" Gathered evidence for 2 weeks, documented everything, filed for divorce and froze all our accounts. He didn't see it coming. Thomas smiled. Good for you. Yeah? Yeah. Takes strength to play the long game. Most people react emotionally. You were strategic. I wanted to burn his life down, I admitted. I wanted him to lose everything. Did he? Pretty much. He lost most of his money, his reputation took a hit, his side pieces left him when they realized he was broke. His lawyer got suspended. It was very satisfying. You scare me a little bit, Thomas said, but he was still smiling. Should I? Probably. But mostly I'm just impressed. And grateful I'm not an idiot like your ex. We dated for 8 months before he asked me to move in with him. I said no, not because I didn't love him. I did. But because I'd learned something important from my marriage. I needed to own my own space, have my own place I could return to, somewhere that was mine alone. Thomas understood. Makes sense. You fought too hard for independence to give it up now. Exactly. Can I still stay over sometimes? Obviously. We made it work. He had his apartment. I had my townhouse. We spent weekends together, traveled together, built a life together without legally or financially entangling ourselves. It was perfect. 3 years after the divorce, I was sitting on my balcony with Justice the cat when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Is this Natalie Harrison? A woman's voice. Professional. Cautious. It's Natalie Foster now. I went back to my maiden name. My name is Bryn. This is awkward. I'm engaged to your ex-husband. My stomach dropped. Okay. I found something. Actually, I found a lot of things. And I didn't know who else to call. What did you find? Receipts? Bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. Text messages to other women. It's all happening again, isn't it? He's doing to me what he did to you. I closed my eyes, took a breath. How far along are you in the relationship? We've been together 14 months, engaged for 3. Are you married yet? No, the wedding's in 2 months. Don't marry him, I said immediately. Whatever you do, don't marry him. But I love him. I loved him too. And he systematically destroyed me while I smiled and made dinner. He'll do it to you. He's probably already doing it. Silence on the other end. Then, can we meet? I need to show you what I found. We met at a coffee shop. Not the one where I'd run into Garrett. A different one across town. Bryn was younger than me. Late 20s, pretty, with nervous hands that kept fidgeting with her engagement ring. She had a folder full of evidence spread across the table between us. It was like looking at my own history. Different women. Same patterns. Same offshore account in the Caymans. Same lies about business trips. How did you find all this? I asked. I'm an accountant, she said. He asked me to handle our taxes. When I started digging through his finances to get everything organized, nothing made sense. Money coming and going from places it shouldn't. I got suspicious and started investigating. Smart woman. Smarter than I'd been. What do you want from me? I asked. Tell me what to do. You've been through this. You know how he operates. I thought about lying, telling her to confront him, give him a chance to explain. Watch her make my mistakes. But I couldn't. Document everything, I said. Every receipt, every bank statement, every suspicious text. Take photos, make copies, store them somewhere he can't access, then call this lawyer. I wrote Patricia's number on a napkin. Tell her I referred you. She'll know exactly what to do. Bryn stared at the napkin. If I do this, the wedding's off. My family will be devastated. His family will hate me. Everyone will say I'm the one who ruined it. And if you don't do this, you'll be divorced in 5 years with nothing to show for it except trauma and lawyer fees. He doesn't change, Bryn. Men like Garrett don't wake up one day and decide to be honest. They just get better at hiding. She nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you regret marrying him? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. Because if I hadn't married him, I wouldn't have learned what I'm capable of. I wouldn't have learned to protect myself. I wouldn't have learned that I'm strong enough to walk away from someone I love when they're hurting me. Those are lessons I needed. But it hurt. It hurt like hell. Still does sometimes. But pain is how you learn where your boundaries are. Bryn took the napkin with Patricia's number. Thank you. Call her today. Don't wait. He's probably already planning how to hide more money before the wedding. She left. I sat there with my coffee, wondering if I'd just saved someone or condemned her to the same nightmare I'd survived. My phone buzzed. Text from Thomas. Dinner at my place tonight? I'm making my famous mediocre pasta. I smiled. Your mediocre pasta is my favorite. You have terrible taste. Obviously. I'm dating you. Rude, but fair. I walked to my car feeling lighter than I had in years. Garrett wasn't my problem anymore. He was someone else's warning sign, someone else's lesson about trusting the wrong person. I'd graduated from that course, passed with honors, moved on to better things. 6 weeks later, Bryn texted me, called off the wedding. He tried to convince me I was crazy. Patricia helped me file a restraining order. Thank you for saving my life. I wrote back, you saved your own life. I just gave you directions. She sent me a photo of her ringless left hand with a champagne glass in the background. I showed it to Thomas, who was reading on my couch with Justice purring on his lap. The ex's new fiancé, I explained. She found out he was doing the same thing to her that he did to me. Called off the wedding. Thomas whistled. How many times can one guy repeat the same pattern before he figures out he's the problem? Based on Garrett? Infinity times. Self-awareness isn't his strong suit. Should I be worried you keep tabs on your ex? I don't. He keeps imploding near me. It's different. Thomas laughed and pulled me down onto the couch next to him. Fair enough. As long as you're not planning to ruin anyone else's life, I think we're good. Just his. And only when he deserves it. Which is always. Exactly. 4 years after the divorce, I stopped thinking about Garrett entirely. Not in a conscious way. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to erase him from my memory. It was more gradual. Days would pass without him crossing my mind, then weeks, then months. I built a life that had nothing to do with him. Got another promotion at work, traveled to 12 countries, published an article about supply chain management that got picked up by a major industry magazine, adopted a second cat, learned to make pottery. Thomas and I broke up after 3 years. It was amicable. He wanted kids. I didn't. We were both honest about it from the beginning, but somewhere along the way, he'd thought I might change my mind. I hadn't. We stayed friends, still texted about work stuff, still met for coffee every few months, still genuinely cared about each other's well-being. That felt like growth, being able to love someone and let them go without burning everything down. I dated other people, some short-term, some lasted months. None of them felt like forever, and I was okay with that. Forever had been my goal with Garrett, and look how that turned out. 5 years after the divorce, I was having lunch with my sister when she brought him up. "Did you hear about Garrett?" she asked. "Nope, and I'd like to keep it that way." He got married again, third time. I speared a piece of lettuce. Good for him. That's it? No curiosity about who or why or how. None whatsoever. He's not my circus, not my monkeys. My sister smiled. "You really have moved on? Took long enough. Can I tell you anyway? Because it's kind of amazing." Fine. He married a divorce attorney. She makes twice what he makes. Made him sign a prenup that basically says if he cheats, she gets everything. One of her former clients saw the whole thing and said the prenup is ironclad. Airtight. Brutal. I laughed so hard I snorted my iced tea. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Right? Like maybe he finally met his match. Or maybe he'll cheat anyway and lose everything. Again, some people are just committed to self-destruction. Either way, not your problem. Exactly. We moved on to other topics. My sister's promotion, her daughter's college applications, where we should vacation next year. Garrett had become what he should have been years ago. A footnote. A story I told at parties sometimes when the conversation turned to bad exes and lessons learned. Nothing more. 6 years after the divorce, I was sorting through old boxes in my storage unit when I found my wedding album. I'd shoved it in there right after everything finalized, too angry and hurt to look at it. Now, holding it in my hands, I felt nothing. Just curiosity. I sat on the concrete floor and opened it. There we were, younger, smiling, surrounded by people who thought we'd make it. I traced my face in the photos. That naive woman who thought she'd found her person. I didn't pity her. She'd done the best she could with the information she had. And when she got new information, she'd burned it all down and built something better. That took courage. I flipped through the pages. The ceremony, the reception, the staged photos of us kissing and laughing and cutting cake. All lies, I realized. Not because we didn't mean them in that moment, but because meaning something in a moment doesn't make it true long-term. I closed the album and threw it in the donation pile. Someone else could have it. Maybe they'd repurpose it. Collage project, art installation, ironic decoration. I didn't need it anymore. 7 years after the divorce, I was completely different. Not in the obvious ways. I looked mostly the same. Worked at the same company, lived in the same townhouse, had the same cranky cats. But internally, everything had shifted. I trusted myself now. Not in a blind way. In a grounded way. I knew my instincts were good. I knew I could survive betrayal. I knew I was worth more than someone who'd lie to my face while planning to leave. I dated someone seriously for the first time since Thomas. Her name was Alexis. She was a physical therapist with strong hands and a direct way of communicating that I found refreshing. "I like you," she said on our 4th date. "I think we should be exclusive. I like you too. Let's do it." No games. No wondering where we stood. Just honesty. It was shockingly simple. We moved in together after a year. Her apartment was bigger than my townhouse, and she had a backyard for the cats. I kept my place as a rental property, passive income and a backup plan. Old habits die hard. Alexis understood. "Trust takes time," she said. "I'm not offended you want a safety net." 8 years after the divorce, Garrett's 3rd marriage ended. I heard about it through the grapevine. His divorce attorney wife had hired an investigator after suspecting an affair. She'd found evidence of not 1 but 2 ongoing relationships. Filed for divorce and according to the prenup took everything. His house, his retirement accounts, his car, even his dog. He was back to living in a small apartment, working for someone else's consulting firm and paying yet another round of spousal support. When my sister told me, I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not for the cheating. Not for the loss. For the fact that he was 52 years old and still hadn't figured out how to be honest. Still couldn't sit with himself long enough to address whatever was broken inside him. That was a sad way to live. "You feel bad for him?" my sister said, reading my expression. "A little. More for the person he could have been if he'd done the work. That's very evolved of you." "I'm very evolved now. I do yoga and everything." She laughed. "Remember when you were going to destroy him? I did destroy him. Then I moved on. That's the whole point of revenge. You get it, you process it, you release it. Otherwise, you're just a bitter person defined by someone else's mistakes. When did you get so wise?" Therapy. Lots of therapy. And time. Time helps. 9 years after the divorce, I got an email. From Garrett. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The email was long. Pages of apologies and explanations. How he'd been in therapy for 3 years. How he'd finally realized the damage he'd caused. How he wanted to make amends, not for his sake, but for mine. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Just acknowledged the pain he'd caused and took responsibility for it. It was surprisingly well written, thoughtful, sincere. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and went to make dinner. Alexis found me chopping vegetables. "You okay?" Garrett emailed me, long apology. Seems genuine. You going to respond? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks engaging with him in any capacity is a step backward. What does your gut say? I thought about it. My gut says he needed to send that email for his own healing. Whether I respond or not doesn't change anything for me. I already did my healing. Then don't respond. You don't owe him anything. I know. But maybe responding isn't about owing him. Maybe it's about closing the door completely. Or maybe the door's already closed and you don't need to tell him that. She was right. I never responded to the email. 3 months later, he sent another one, shorter this time. Just, I understand if you can't forgive me. I hope you're happy. I deleted it without reading it twice. 10 years after the divorce, I was sitting on my back porch watching Alexis garden when I realized I'd gone months without thinking about Garrett. The divorce wasn't a defining feature of my life anymore. It was just something that happened, like graduating college, like getting my first job, like learning to drive. An event, a chapter, not the whole story. I'd rebuilt everything he'd tried to break, built it stronger, built it better, built it mine, and that was its own kind of victory. The best revenge isn't living well, it's living authentically, living honestly, living without the weight of someone else's dysfunction dragging you down. I'd done that. I was still doing it. And I'd keep doing it long after Garrett faded completely from my memory. Because that's what you do when someone tries to erase you. You don't erase them back. You just become so fully yourself that they become irrelevant. 11 years after the divorce, I ran into Meredith at a work conference. It took me a second to recognize her. She'd changed her hair, lost weight, looked tired. She recognized me immediately. Her face went pale. I should go, she said, gathering her things. Wait, she stopped. I'm not going to make a scene, I said. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank me? For being exactly who you were. If you'd been a better person, if you'd told me what was happening, maybe I would have stayed with him longer. Wasted more years? You helped me see exactly who he was. So thank you. Meredith's eyes filled with tears. He did the same thing to me, after you, with other women. I know. I heard. I didn't know he was married when we first got together. By the time I found out, I was already in too deep. I don't need your excuses, I said, not unkindly. I just wanted you to know you gave me clarity. Sometimes the worst people in your life end up being the best teachers. I walked away. Behind me, I heard her crying. I didn't feel bad. 12 years after the divorce, I married Alexis. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. No elaborate planning, no stress about flowers or centerpieces or seating charts. Just two people who'd chosen each other, standing in front of people who loved them, making promises we actually intended to keep. My sister was my maid of honor. She cried through the whole ceremony. This is what you deserve, she whispered afterward. This is what it's supposed to look like. She was right. Marriage to Alexis was nothing like marriage to Garrett. We fought sometimes, about money, about whose family to visit for holidays, about whether to remodel the kitchen. Normal couple stuff, but we fought fair. No lying, no deflecting, no manipulation, just two adults trying to solve problems together. It was boring in the best way possible. 13 years after the divorce, I became the VP of operations at my company. Corner office, significant raise, stock options. The kind of career success I dreamed about when I was still married to Garrett, working 2 jobs to support his entrepreneurial phase. At my celebration dinner, Alexis raised her glass to my wife who rebuilt her entire life from scratch and made it better than it ever was before. Everyone clinked glasses, cheered, toasted my success. But I knew the truth. The real success wasn't the promotion. It was surviving the demolition, clearing the rubble, building something new on a foundation I'd poured myself. That was the victory. 14 years after the divorce, my sister called me crying. He's dead, she said. Who? Garrett. Heart attack. His brother just posted about it on Facebook. I sat down, processing. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I think so. It's weird. I thought I'd feel something more. Relief or anger or satisfaction. But mostly I just feel neutral. He can't hurt anyone else now. True, but that's not my responsibility. Never was. We talked for a while longer. She asked if I wanted to go to the funeral. Absolutely not. That part of my life is closed. Has been for over a decade. Good. Just wanted to make sure. After I hung up, I sat on the porch with my coffee. Alexis joined me. You heard? I asked. Your sister texted me. How are you feeling? Fine. Genuinely fine. Is that weird? No. You processed that grief a long time ago. When you realized who he really was. You've been mourning the person you thought he was for 14 years. The actual person dying doesn't change anything. She was right. The man I'd mourned had been dead since the moment I found those boarding passes in his jacket pocket. Everything after that was just logistics. 15 years after the divorce, I barely remembered what Garrett's voice sounded like. I'd moved on so completely that he existed only as a cautionary tale I told younger women at work when they talked about relationship problems. Trust your gut, I'd say. And if something feels wrong, investigate. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for proof to hit you over the head. If you feel like something's off, it probably is. Some of them listened. Some didn't. That was their choice. I'd learned you can't save people from their own lessons. You can only warn them and hope they're smarter than you were. Most of the time they weren't. That was okay too. 16 years after the divorce, I realized I'd lived longer without Garrett than with him. My entire adult life had been rebuilt. Every habit, every friendship, every choice. None of it had his fingerprints on it anymore. I owned a consulting business on the side, helped companies restructure their operations, made 6 figures doing it, traveled internationally for work. Alexis and I had bought a second home in the mountains, somewhere we could escape to on weekends. Somewhere quiet where we could hike and read and exist without the noise of the world. Life was good, not perfect. Perfect wasn't real, but but good. Solidly, consistently good. And that was more than enough. 17 years after the divorce, I got a letter from Garrett's estate lawyer. Apparently, he'd left me something in his will. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a handwritten note. Natalie, I know this doesn't fix anything, but it's the amount I stole from you through the offshore account plus interest. I should have done this years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I hope you're happy. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Gee. I stared at the check for a long time. Then I deposited it and donated the entire amount to a women's domestic violence shelter. The note, I burned. 18 years after the divorce, someone asked me what I'd learned from the whole experience. We were at a dinner party. The question came from a friend of a friend who was going through her own messy divorce. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I learned that you can survive almost anything if you're willing to feel uncomfortable, I said. That playing the long game is more effective than emotional outbursts. That documentation is power. That lawyers who specialize in divorce are worth every penny. That you can love someone and still walk away when they hurt you. That rebuilding takes longer than destroying, but it's worth it. That you're stronger than you think. That closure comes from within, not from apologies. That forgiveness is optional. That some people never change, and that's not your responsibility. That being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. That trust, once broken, can be rebuilt with yourself, even if never with that person again. That material things don't matter, but self-respect does. That revenge is sweetest when it's just living well without them. That you don't need anyone's permission to protect yourself. That I stopped. Realized I'd been talking for 5 minutes straight. The woman was crying. Thank you, she whispered. You'll get through this, I said. And on the other side, you'll be someone you actually like. Someone who knows what they will and won't tolerate. Someone who trusts themselves. That's worth all the pain. She nodded. I believed it, because I'd lived it. 19 years after the divorce, I barely thought about Garrett at all. He existed in my memory the way childhood does. A time that happened. A version of myself I barely recognized. A life that felt like it belonged to someone else. Sometimes late at night, I'd remember something. The way he laughed, the coffee cup he always used, how he'd kiss my forehead when he left for work. But those memories didn't hurt anymore. They were just information. Data about a person who used to exist. I was someone different now. Someone who'd been forged in the fire of betrayal and come out steel. Someone who knew their worth, who demanded honesty, who walked away from anything that felt wrong. Someone free. 20 years after the divorce, my sister and I were having lunch when she brought it up one last time. Do you ever regret how it all went down? She asked. The nuclear option, the scorched earth. I thought about those 13 days between finding the receipts and filing for divorce. The cold calculation, the strategic gathering of evidence, the absolute destruction of everything we'd built. No, I said finally. He was trying to erase me, financially, emotionally, legally. He was planning to divorce me and leave me with nothing while he rode off into the sunset with his stolen money and his side pieces. I just beat him to it. And I made sure he couldn't do to someone else what he did to me. Did it work? Did you save anyone? Saved at least one. Bryn, Garrett's third almost wife. She called off the wedding because I told her the truth. So it was worth it. It was worth it for me. Whether it helped anyone else is just a bonus. My sister smiled. You're kind of a badass, you know that? Took me long enough to figure it out. We finished lunch, talked about other things. Our lives. Our families. The trip we were planning for next year. Garrett didn't come up again. He'd become what he should have always been, irrelevant. A closed chapter in a book I'd finished reading years ago. Sometimes people ask me how I got over it, how I moved on, how I let go. The truth is I didn't let go. Not exactly. I just stopped letting it hold me. There's a difference. Letting go implies you're releasing something, granting freedom, offering forgiveness. I didn't do that. I just built a life so full that there wasn't room for him anymore. I filled every space he'd occupied with something better, someone better, experiences that mattered, relationships built on honesty, work that fulfilled me, hobbies that brought joy. Eventually, he just got squeezed out by all the good stuff. That's the real revenge. Not destruction, not even justice. Just living so well that the person who hurt you becomes a footnote, a minor character in a story that's ultimately about your own becoming. I became someone I liked, someone I trusted, someone who knew their value and refused to negotiate it. That's the person Garrett couldn't touch, couldn't manipulate, couldn't destroy. That person existed because of him, but not for him. And that made all the difference. So when people ask how I survived my divorce, I tell them the truth. I didn't survive it. I used it. I used it to learn what I wouldn't tolerate. I used it to understand my own strength. I used it to build boundaries. I used it to demand better. And then I walked away from the wreckage and never looked back. Because that's what winners do. They don't stay in the ruins mourning what was lost. They take the bricks and build something new, something better, something true, something entirely their own. And 20 years later, when someone asks if you regret how it all went down, you look them in the eye and say no, not even for a second. Because the person you became was worth everything you lost. Every single time.